I see the unintended consequences of even the use of alcohol and substances and how that can place individuals in unintended consequences, behavior that they had no intention of being in, where substance and alcohol abuse can blur the lines of what we believe is right or wrong, or situations that we ever thought we'd be in. And so what I do is, I have you all on bated breath wondering, is I'm an attorney who for the last 12 to 13 years has been specializing in Title IX, sexual misconduct particularly. It started off as training, which I love and is my first love, is what we're doing today is preventive behavior. But the need really quickly shifted, primarily in colleges and universities, and now it's falling down to K-12, which we anticipated, is investigations. Investigations of sexual misconduct and sexual assault. And in each of those investigations, a key piece of my investigation is determining if consent existed. We all know that common. The Me Too movement has just highlighted these issues of sexual misconduct in the workplace, in school environments. But when you're looking at consent and determining if it occurred, a key piece is determining incapacitation, right? So that's what we have to, as an investigator. And when I train a lot of students and administrators at colleges, universities, and schools, I always say incapacitation is not intoxication, right? A lot of us have been intoxicated and engaged in sexual behavior. But incapacitation is a different situation, because if an individual is incapacitated, they can't consent. What does that mean? I give a real simple example of what capacity means. If I leave tonight and I slip on the ice, God forbid, that would occur, and they call the ambulance, and I knock my head, and what do they first say to me? Who's the President of the United States? How old are you? What's the date? Before they can give me medical care, they have to be determined if I can consent to that care. So when I investigate sexual assaults and sexual misconduct, I have to determine if the complaining party, we like to say that versus the victim, even had the capacity to consent. So drug, alcohol use, legal and illegal, is taken into account. I can tell you the same story that I've talked to probably 20 to 30 victims. And how they describe it is, I go to a party and someone hands me an open beer bottle or a red Solo cup, and I've had a drink or two, I feel fine, and then literally they either completely black out, have no memory from 9:30 at night dancing on the fraternity floor to literally they wake up and they're in somebody's room and they don't know where their underwear is and they have no recollection. Or the more frightening, I've had a number of victims, is that'll happen and all of a sudden they kind of feel fuzzy, there's something weird, but they've just had this second beer. And all of a sudden they can't speak, they can barely move their arms, and someone is directing them into a dorm room or somewhere else, removing their clothes. And it's, as they all describe it, it's like standing up here in a bubble and watching this happen to you, but you can't say anything, you can't fight, because the drug that has been used has just numbed all their ability, their muscle control and everything. So I think everyone's like, oh, do I have this discussion with my students going off to college? It's also dwindling down into K-12. We need to be aware of that. Absolutely, we have to have a discussion. I would never let Caroline, Jack, or Teddy go to college without being really frank and honest and authentic about what the risks are that they're engaging in. Your perpetrators are looking for victims that are intoxicated and sedated. Perpetrators they are. I mean, they're looking for the girl who's stumbling drunk or the gentleman who's throwing up. That's who they know that they can take advantage of. I have a number of investigations where the victim is not only obviously incapacitated, they're asleep, they're unconscious. They wake up to someone sexually assaulting them. So what I kind of spin off this is abuse sometimes often, I've talked to a lot of different addicts, they find themselves engaging in behavior that they never would have thought they would be. At what point in time, that whether it's to pay off a habit, whether it's just kind of to feel a belonging sense. And then in college, it just, I think, escalates with students being ill-prepared of the risk, not really having, I see students in that have never been exposed or never been discussed, how the effects of beer can affect you versus vodka can affect you versus marijuana mixing with something. And it can have real dire consequences. And I will tell you, when you talk about trauma, a sexual assault at any age, but particularly at a young age and in an age of college when you're forming, it breaks my heart when I sit across from these complainants and victims, because I know they never will be the same. And so they have a lot of work from a trauma to move forward. And I think we just have to be more honest with ourselves. And honest, I think the doctor said one earlier we met, and she said something that resonated so much is, I think we like to forgive our own sins and our own kids. If we engaged in behavior, well, it's not that bad, I'm fine, I'm not addicted. And I've talked to Caroline's 13, my oldest, about this. I may have been able to drink, and I was able to stop. I had a glass of water, I could manage that. But you don't know until you take that first drink or engage in that substance abuse whether you have that gene or you have that. So you have to be very mindful of that and be very conscious of also about the marijuana issue. I am almost, next week, 47 years old. Marijuana when I was in college is nothing like marijuana today. But every kid, because of the legalization issues, think, no, it's not that big of a deal. I strongly believe it is a gateway drug. I see that in all my sexual misconduct cases where there is substance abuse issues from a perpetrator standpoint as well, but primarily that they're engaging in abusive behavior. So my advice to you is, I believe that use and abuse of substance abuse and alcohol can put us in very vulnerable situations that we would not anticipate, but the consequences we have to